Hi, my name is Maren Mahoney. This video is intended to show you how to create and use virtual floppies containing answer files so that you can do unattended installation of Cisco UC servers. The specific procedure I'm going to be looking at today applies to call manager, publisher subscribers, as well as presence servers, but the basic procedure can be used to do any of the Cisco UC servers that support the answer files. As a bonus topic, the answer file generator that Cisco, tool that Cisco provides, does not automatically include presence information in the cluster config file used to pre-populate the call manager publisher with the subscribers, both call manager subscribers and IM&P subscribers. I'm going to show you how to edit the clusterConfig.xml file so that you can do an unattended installation of the entire cluster, both call managers and presence servers, simultaneously. The tools I'm going to be using today, the Cisco Answer File Generator. Here's the URL, but you can just Google it. It comes right up. We'll also be using Notepad++, which you can get at this URL. If you're not familiar with Notepad++, I encourage you to go examine it. In addition to being a great tool for editing raw XML, because it does some initial parsing of the XML formatting, the Notepad++ utility is also great for editing things like the CSV files you use as part of tar files for imports into Call Manager. It's the best tool I know to make sure the formatting of those files is correct so that your imports and exports work properly. We will be using WinImage, again here's the URL, to create the answer floppy files themselves, the virtual floppies that we'll be mounting, into in my case, VMware Virtualization, vSphere. That last step, I'm going to show you how to mount the floppies for VMware. If you use a different virtualization platform, obviously that'll just be a little bit different. So here's the basic procedure. Step 1, we'll use the Cisco Answer File Generator to generate for your Call Manager Publisher and Call Manager Subscriber platform config.xml. That's the basic information for the server itself. What's its name, what's its IP address, etc. Part of that process will also allow us to generate a cluster config.xml for the Call Manager Publisher. This allows us to pre-populate the Call Manager itself, the publisher itself, with information about the subscribers. As you're aware, when I want to install a Call Manager subscriber into the Call Manager cluster, I have to pre-tell the Call Manager Publisher that that subscriber is coming, and then I can install the subscriber. With the clusterConfig.xml, that information is populated in the Call Manager database during the installation process, and this allows us to do a simultaneous installation of my publisher and my one or more subscribers. As a separate step, we're going to use the answer file generator to generate a platform config.xml and a cluster config.xml for the IM&P server. Now this is a separate process, but that cluster config.xml file needs to be a single file, the one that includes the Call Manager Publisher and Subscriber, and also the IM&P server. We need a single file to add into the Call Manager Publisher database that includes all of my subscribers. This is the special part. I'm going to show you how to use Notepad++ to grab a certain section of information from the IM&P server cluster config.xml and add that into the cluster config.xml that we generated for the Call Manager servers. This allows us, as I mentioned, to do a simultaneous installation of the entire cluster at once. Once the files are configured, we will use WinImage to create the virtual floppies. We will need one for each server. So we're going to have a floppy for the Call Manager Publisher, which includes a platform config and cluster config.xml files. We'll have a separate floppy for the Call Manager Subscriber, and we will have a separate floppy for the IM&P server. Finally, we'll mount the virtual floppies and begin installation. So let's get started. Step 1. We're going to use the Cisco Answer File Generator to generate our files. Now, when you go to the Answer File Generator, you will choose the type of server that you're going to create answer files for. And as I mentioned there are a large number of server types that are supported for this, and the version. Very important that you pick the correct version so that all the correct fields are there. I'm going to be creating the publisher and subscriber call manager servers on this page. Now you populate the information. This is the platform administration field. I'm going to be using the credentials that we use in our labs here at Sunset Learning. Then the security password. Now in my case I'm going to be using the same password essentially for everything, and that is because it's our lab environment. In a production environment obviously you'd want to follow good design procedures. Great. That is the call manager application credentials. So again, the platform administration, the OS, the CLI, and then this is the credentials for the CUCM application itself. Certificate information. You'll be using obviously the stuff that's appropriate for your own organization. Be very careful as you're typing this in. Call Manager will self-generate certificates based on the information here, and it's not a problem to generate these things, but to regenerate them, as if you've ever done it, is kind of a pain. So, and again, I'm using the information that we generally use in our lab environment. Okay, SMTP. If you want to activate SMTP, you check the box and then indicate where your mail server is, or your SMTP server is. Changing the Mtu size. I'm not going to go through all the little steps for this. Look in the design guide to determine whether in your environment you need to change the Mtu size. Hostname for my publisher. Now we're doing the publisher section here. DNS. Indicate where your DNS server is. If you've ever done a call manager installation, you will know that the installation process checks both the forward and reverse DNS records at your DNS server, so make sure those are populated before you do your installation. And in our case, time zone. Our primary lab environment is in Denver, Colorado, which is why I use this. NTP. As you know, the Call Manager Publisher is the primary time server for your Call Manager cluster. The Call Manager itself, if you're installing pubs and subs, it doesn't matter a whole lot what stratum your NTP server is. However, as soon as you try to add a presence server into the mix, your Call Manager Publisher NTP source must be stratum 3 or higher. So make sure whatever NTP server your Call Manager Publisher is pointing to is stratum 2. And I'm going to be adding that information here. Dynamic cluster configuration. Now here is the interesting part. If you've done the installations, you'll know that the Call Manager Publisher takes longer to install because it has to generate the initial database and whatnot than things like subscribers and IM&P servers. So what this is allowing me to do is indicate how long a non-publisher server should continue to check in with the Call Manager Publisher to wait for, hey, are you ready for me to come in? Because remember that the clusterConfig.xml file is going to populate our subscribers in the Call Manager Publisher database. When the subscriber installs, it's going to need to, it's part of its installation process, is to check in with the publisher to make sure that it's authorized, security password's right, and that it exists. So this gives me a timer allowing me to say how long my subscriber server should continue to check in with the publisher. Hey, am I there yet? Hey, are you ready for me yet? Hey, are you ready for me yet? 24 hours is the default. I'm going to change that to 6. If you uncheck that box, that's fine. But if you do that, then wait for the Call Manager Publisher installation to complete and then launch the installations for your subscribers and IM&P servers. It's really not a problem. Okay, secondary node configuration. Here I'm going to be putting in information about a subscriber. Do I want to change my Mtu size to be different than my publisher? Network information. Here's the host name for my subscriber. Configure DNS client. Yes, I do. And handy dandy checkbox, use the primary node's DNS settings. It just copies it in from that earlier part. Ditto with time zone. Do I want to use the primary node's time zone settings? Yes, I do. Okay, so I now have the information in for my cluster-wide information. That includes things like the database access information, primary node, and secondary node. Add a secondary node. Here's the beautiful part now. If I need to add an additional subscriber, I can do so right here. Let's say subbed at HQ-2, and that would be at, let's say, 17. Now, all the rest of this information is the same. Same gateway, same IP, same subnet mask, same domain, etc., etc., and then I can, poof, add a secondary node. The platform config.xmls will be generated for all of the subscribers that I identify here. So again, you can create the entire cluster all at once. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that, just simplify things for us today. All right, so I have my publisher ready, I have my subscriber ready. Let's generate our answer files. Read the explanation if you're going to be doing this. Effectively, what it's saying is that you have to call the platform config file exactly platform config.xml, and that is whether it's the publisher or the subscriber. What this means is that you're going to have it in a separate folder. The publisher's files and the subscriber's files are going to have to be in a separate folder because it's going to have the same name. And the cluster config always has to be called clusterConfig.xml. So as you're saving these files, make sure that they're named correctly. So let's start with the publisher. I'm going to download the file. Another window, here's my XML text. Grab it, go into Notepad++, and I'm going to paste. And I could just take a quick peek. I can see the information that I added. For instance, here is the name of my publisher. Here is its IP address. Subnet mask, default gateway. Here is my DNS server, etc., etc. Here is the domain that I declared. Here is the time zone that I declared. And if I go down a little bit further, here is my certificate information, including all the parameters that I added. One last item before I move on. Note that the passwords, here's the security password, here's the application password. I've used the same in our case, again, because it's a lab environment. You'll be different in your production environments. But notice that it's hashed. So if you are leaving these files around after installation is done, you don't have to worry about this information getting out. Okay, great. So let's save this file. Save as. I'm going to go to my desktop. I'm going to create a new folder called Publisher. And of course, this is going to be platform config.xml. So platform config.xml, save as type. Now note that Notepad++ allows you to create any variety of formats. In addition, in the menus at the top, I can also specify whether I'm going to use, UTF-8 or whatever. I'm going to be choosing XML, save. Notice that because I've saved it as an XML file, it gives me an easier way to view my the formatting of the XML file itself. Okay, that one's done. Let's go get, now, I'm going to close this one. Let's go get the platform config XML file for the subscriber. Same process as before, copy it. I'm going to paste it into Notepad++, file, save as, and again, this has to be in a different folder. because it's going to have the same name as the one that we just created for the publisher. Ta-da! Finally, let's take a look at this cluster config file. This is the information that gets injected into the Call Manager database during the installation process. Normally, you would have to build your Call Manager Publisher, boot your Call Manager Publisher, log in, manually add subscribers and IM&P servers, and then do the installation of those servers. This allows me to inject it during the installation process, and again, that allows me to do a simultaneous installation of the entire thing. Download file. And I'm going to go ahead and save it so that the XML formatting is a little clearer. clusterConfig.xml, and that's an XML file. Check out what we have. I have a publisher, and its IP address is this. Node role is 1, node usage is 0. Here's what these values mean. Node role means, am I a call manager, which is a value of 1, or am I a presence server, which is a value of 2? Because this is a call manager, the value is 1. Node usage. If I am the publisher of my system, then I have a value of 0. Note that I have, so that's the publisher information, right? Publisher, publisher. If I look at the subscriber section now, here is my name, here's my IP address again. Node role is 1. Why? Because I'm a call manager. Node usage is also a 1 because I am not a publisher. Beautiful. So let's close this. Now, I have already gone through the process of adding in the information for my presence server. I have used the same platform information, security password, application user credentials, Sunset Learning Institute, blah, 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 SMTP, network information, DNS. Now, the only extra piece of information for your presence server that is not in the Call Manager servers, really, because everything else is the same. The only thing is the IM&P domain name. This is very important. This is the basic domain name that's used in the presence server for things like Jabber and whatnot. But all the rest of the fields are the same. Already filled in. Let's generate. I'm going to add the presence node. I'm going to generate the answer files. And I'm going to get essentially the same set. Now, this is the publisher platform config file. I'm not even going to bother downloading it because I already have one. If you're doing this, again, in a production environment, I would encourage you to download it and compare do a stare and compare. Make sure you haven't made any mistakes. Here is my IM&P platform config file. So here is my platform config.xml file for the presence server. It's going to look just like the one that we created for the subscriber, with a couple of exceptions. Exception number 1, obviously, it's presence server as opposed to a call manager subscriber. So it's going to have an IM&P domain name. This is a field that does not exist in the subscriber. The other thing I want to point out, and this is true also in the subscriber platform config.xml file, I didn't show you this because I wanted to show it to you here, is part of the installation process for a non-publisher server is to say, where is my publisher? And sure enough, CCM data-based host, this is the information about where the publisher is that this particular server is going to belong to. Which cluster is it going to belong to? Part of the installation process for these servers is that you have to give it the information about where that server is, the security password, and it will check in and will not install until that publisher is ready to receive it. All right, so saved. Now, let's go get the more interesting file, which is the new cluster config file. Now I'm just going to put this on my desktop because I don't want to keep it. Cluster config file. Here's the information about the publisher. That is already in the file that we have for the publisher clusterConfig.xml file. Here is the new information. Subscriber. Now in this case, subscriber does not refer to call manager subscriber, it refers to presence subscriber. Node role is a 2 because it's a presence server. Node usage is a 0. Now you're thinking to yourself, wait, didn't I just say that 0 was a publisher? Yes. Remember that although the presence servers starting with call manager 10 are part of the CUCM cluster, and the CUCM publisher is at least theoretically in charge of the whole shebang, that the presence servers themselves maintain their own database. They don't actually do a database exchange like pubs and subs do within call manager. The presence server database is separate, and therefore, because this is the first IM&P node, it's saying this is a publisher. Here is what we're going to want to do. I'm going to want to take this section here, declaring a subscriber. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go back to the clusterConfig.xml file and publisher. Here's the subscriber, right? That's the call manager subscriber, and I will insert the new information. So here is, let me make sure I did that correctly. Here's beginning subscriber, it should show me end subscriber. And then here's beginning subscriber, and it should show me end subscriber. Oh, I see. I just have formatting bad. There we go. This is the trick. It is knowing what to go get out of the clusterConfig.xml generated by the IM&P answer file generator, which section to get, and where to put it in the call manager publisher clusterConfig.xml file so that you have this all of a piece. When this file is injected into the call manager database, now it's going to include information not just on the publisher and the call manager subscriber, but also the IM&P server. I can launch all 3 installations simultaneously. I've got that 6-hour timer that allows the subscriber and the IM&P server to continue to check in with the call manager publisher. It'll check in, I'm not sure what the interval is, but it checks in every periodically to up to the timer that we set, which was 6 hours. Keep saying, hey, you ready for me yet? Hey, you ready for me yet? All right, I'm going to close this. It's going to want me to save. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to go ahead and close this too. We are done with Notepad. So here are my files: clusterConfig.xml, platformconfig.xml. And if I go to the subscriber, I've got a platformconfig.xml, XML document, and then of course the IM&P server platform config. Great. So we've used the answer file generator to create our XML files. We have edited the clusterConfig.xml file for the publisher so that it includes the information about the IM&P server. Final step for the creation of the floppies themselves is to use WinImage to create the floppy. So here we go. WinImage, I'm using an unregistered version. It says shareware. It does require you after 30 days to register the software, but it's shareware. File, new. What am I creating? I'm creating a standard 1.44 megabit floppy. And then you can either drag and drop or you can inject. I'm going to inject files. Specifically, I'm going to start with the publisher. And I want both of these files on my floppy. Yes. File, save as. This part's really important. You want an FLP file, And in my case, I'm going to be calling this the same as the name of the system I'm installing. Obviously, use your own naming convention. Ta-da! Now let's repeat this process for the subscriber. And one more. Creating the IM&P server. And here we go. Here is our publisher floppy, our subscriber floppy, and our IM&P floppy. Okay, last step. Let's put these floppies into vSphere. Now I have already deployed OVAs for the publisher, subscriber, and IM&P servers that we're going to be working with today. The next thing I have to do is upload these floppies into the data store. I'm going to put it in a specific spot just because I want to be able to find it. You see 11.5. So what I want to do, I want to upload these files to the data store. Let me do these. Upload. I suppose I could have put all three into a single folder and uploaded the folder as a single unit, but I didn't think that far ahead. And subscriber. Great. They now exist on my data store. So let's start with the publisher. Right click, edit settings. I'm mounting a floppy drive. I want to connect it at power on so that it's attached, it's mounted when we boot the system. And I'm going to use an existing image in the data store. And this is the publisher, so here's that. Once that's ready, I'm going to be doing the subscriber and IM&P servers. Actually, I'm probably not going to bother right now because I want to just show you one more thing because the process is the same for all three servers. Now, I have already mounted the ISO file that is the installation file for the Call Manager server. The other option I did here is to tell it to boot to BIOS on the first boot. This allows me to change the boot order because it's the hard drive first, and obviously there's nothing there because there is no hard drive. The trick I want to show you here is that remember that a Call Manager server is going to boot several times during the installation process. And therefore you have to make sure that when you're setting up the boot order that it goes CD drive and then hard drive and then floppy. So I'm going to go over the boot order. I want the CD-ROM to be first so that it boots to the ISO file, and then it has to be the hard drive because at the second boot we don't want it inadvertently trying to go to that floppy to boot. And here we go. Exit saving changes. So if you've ever done an installation, you'll know that it's a painful process, lots of questions in batches. When you do an installation with an answer floppy, it asks you exactly two questions. Question number one, do you want to do a media test? I'm going to tell it no. And then question number 2 is, hey, I have everything I need. Would you like to proceed with the installation? And I will say yes, and you are done. It doesn't hurt to go back and monitor the installation later on just to make sure everything is groovy, but that's as simple as it is. It's really awesome. It will now complete on its own. I could simultaneously launch the subscriber and IM&P installations, and because of that 6-hour timer, it will continue to check in for up to 6 hours to make sure the publisher is ready for it. So I could launch the whole thing, go away for a few hours, come back, see how it's doing. One of the other beauties of using these answer floppies is the following. If for some reason your installation of the publisher or the subscriber or the IM&P server, whatever, if the installation itself craps out for some other reason, because you already have the answer floppy, you can just remount it and reuse it rather than having again to go through the manual process of answering all those questions by hand. That's what I wanted to show you today. I hope this video is useful to you. Please visit our website at www.sunsetlearning.com. Look for the instructor forums. We've got lots of blogs and videos on a variety of topics. Thank you. Have a great day.